everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and man, am I fired up today. We got a jam-packed Friday show on tap for you guys tonight. First of all, before we get to any business, listen, this Dodgers-Mets series has been, I won't say a dud, just not quite as entertaining as I hoped it might be in picking the Mets. Here's what I do know. Is that I don't really care who wins the Yankees-Guardians series because everybody knows I really hate the Yankees and I really hate Cleveland. But here's what I know what happened last night.
Yankees lose.
Listen, a Yankees heartbreak means a Cleveland victory and celebration. So again, it's a lose-lose. But I'll take what I can get. By the way, game of the year last night in Cleveland, Ohio, with the Guardians topping the Yankees 7-5 in 10 innings. That's not a topic on the show today, but holy cow. You got Big Christmas. The Spanish call, Feliz Navidad, was fantastic at the end of that game. And then David Fry walked it off in the 10th. Aaron Judge finally had a big postseason moment. Took him long enough. But listen, for as bad as I hate both clubs, we may actually get a good series out of it, so I guess I'll take it. But we got a lot to talk about, though. Why this is objectively, no question about it, a must-win, almost a playoff game for the New York Jets this Sunday against my Pittsburgh Steelers. Getting to that in about 12 minutes. Also want to get into what is a as big of a game as Tennessee could possibly play. The Volview in 30 minutes. It's not just any Saturday. It's the third Saturday in October. Tennessee, Alabama, Neyland Stadium. Predict that and talk about that on the Volview in about 30 minutes. And, of course, Week 7 NFL predictions. I am riding high, folks. Okay, 13-1 last week on my pick'ems. And 17, I did the math, including last night with the Broncos beating the Saints in a typical ugly Thursday night game. I'm 17 for my last 18. I'm on a roll. And I've got a lot of surprises for Bryson's Bleak Bet upset of the week. And, of course, my favorite segment in the world, If I Were a Bettin Man. But let's get to business first. To get some football topics first. But first, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
They never cease to be irrelevant. And that's where, listen, I give Jerry Jones a lot of props on that. I may have ripped on Wednesday's show, and I think he deserved every bit of that, not just from me, but from the national media and fans at large. But one of the greatest quarterbacks, if not the greatest quarterback in the history of the Dallas Cowboys, Troy Aikman, was on radio talking about Dallas. Again, they're in their bye week, but we're still talking about them because it's not going so well for them. Here's what Troy Aikman said about the Dallas Cowboys as it relates to their wide receiving core. Take a listen.
I think the routes are terrible. I think they run terrible routes, and I've thought that beyond this year. And I think CeeDee's got to improve in his route running. And as a quarterback, if you're not certain where guys are going to be consistently, it's hard to play the position. And so that's what I see. I see guys lazy coming off the line of scrimmage. Sometimes they run. Usually if they do, it's because they're anticipating they're going to get the football in that play. But if they're not, they don't, and it all ties together. And so I'm not impressed with that part of it. I just finished watching the Baltimore Ravens because I have them this week. You put on a film of theirs and watch their receivers run routes, and they come off the football. And so do San Francisco's and Green Bay's and others. But it's hard to play the position if you're not certain how guys are going to run routes or where they're going to be. And I'm not speaking for Dak. Dak may say, hey, I think everything's amazing. But as a former quarterback watching it, it's got to get a lot better.
One of the reasons that I've been a big proponent of guys like Troy Aikman, outspoken broadcasters or play-by-play guys, and I'm seeing Tom Brady, who's obviously brand new to this game of broadcasting, calling games, is just being completely unabashed, honest. Tell me exactly what you see. That's why, I may sound like the biggest Mark Jackson defender in the history of the world. I'm a Warriors fan. Steve Kerr's my guy. He's an awesome coach. Mark Jackson was fantastic as well. I thought Mark Jackson was a great broadcaster because Mark Jackson told you exactly what was happening and really didn't care what you thought. So that's why I appreciate Troy. And again, he's just like any other analyst is going to watch tape going into a game because he and Joe are calling Monday Night Football, which the Ravens are playing. So that's what that Ravens topic was, or the Ravens reference was in reference to. Listen, I'm not going to act like I've sat here for the last 5 days and watched Cowboys tape like Troy has, and certainly, God knows, I couldn't see the tape like Troy would as a Hall of Fame quarterback, 3-time Super Bowl champion, and the leader of one of the greatest dynasties in the history of the NFL, the 90s Cowboys. Here's what I will say. whatever he's seeing as it relates to quote-unquote lazy routes, even by CeeDee Lamb, who even still, despite said lazy routes, top 5 in the NFL still in receiving yards. I mean, I'm watching the games. I'm like, I don't see quite the same CeeDee Lamb I saw, and he's still great. So kudos to CeeDee. And again, I think he and Dak over the bye week and over the course of the season will continue to build their rapport. But as a collective for the Dallas Cowboys, here's what I do know. And I saw this, some of these advanced analytics. The Dallas Cowboys are 32nd in receiver separation. Now, the laziness that Troy alluded to may have something to do with that. I don't know. Here's what I do know is that, and I have said this not off and on, since you can go back to week 1 of the 2022 season when I said this, that CeeDee Lamb's awesome. And that's all Dak's got. I will go so far as to say this, because I've alluded to, but the more and more games I watch, I'm like, yeah, I think this is a fair opinion to have and a correct opinion to have. Take Drake May off the Patriots. Put Dak Prescott in his place, bring CeeDee Lamb along with him, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. They are the New England Patriots offense, just with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. There's no difference. Both teams have an abysmal offensive line. The Cowboys have a bottom 10 pass blocking offensive line. So they can't protect Dak, in large part, A, because of injuries, B, because Zach Martin, I don't know what's happened to him. He is getting up there in age, to his credit. And listen, he's going to the Hall of Fame. I'm not trying to use this as a referendum on Zach Martin's career. Zach Martin, I think by Pro Football Focus, got like a 0 grade. I think I saw the other day. Zach Martin was awful against Detroit. So your best offensive lineman has been terrible. You got 2 of your offensive linemen are rookies at left tackle and at center. Dallas Cowboys have a bad offensive line like the Patriots. Dallas Cowboys are lower than the Patriots, lower than the whole league in terms of separation. Here's what I also know. They can't run the football. Dead last, 32nd. The Cowboys are in rushing offense. Now, I didn't think it'd be that bad, and that's one of the things I got wrong on the Cowboys coming into the season, because I said, hey, despite the terrible offseason, my takeaway was they weren't that good last year. The roster, I said all year, it's fine. It's mostly being carried by a great quarterback and receiver. And what I thought at the time was actually pretty good play calling by McCarthy. Now, that either changed or I was just dead wrong on that at the time. But I thought losing Tony Pollard, Pollard's a good back. He's nothing special. It's not like the Cowboys lost Derrick Henry like the Titans did, for example, who ended up ironically signing Pollard. It was Rico Dowdle can get the job done. No, he actually hasn't. His best game was against my Steelers. He had, I think, 87 yards rushing and almost cost them the game at the goal line when the Cowboys, at the time, looked like they had a sure win before Dak Prescott had to bail them out by recovering the fumble and then throwing the game-winning touchdown. Is that with Dallas, and again, it's the thing that listen, you don't have to love Dak Prescott as much as I do. That's fine. That's well within your right to do so. My case has always been this, or at least has been this certainly for the last few years, and especially this season, is that you want Dak Prescott to be great. We all do. I mean, I should say we all do. Those of us that believe in Dak or love the Cowboys, whatever, think that he's capable of doing that and expect that of him. We give a lot of quarterbacks a pass when they don't have the requisite. I mean, Justin Herbert, who I want to be upfront about this. I'm a massive Justin Herbert fan. I said before that draft, I was wrong because Burrow was better. I said Herbert was the best quarterback in that 2020 draft 4 years ago. Now, I was wrong on that. He's ended up being the second or third. We'll see what Jordan Love continues to do. I love Herbert. He got a pass for years because he had a horrible head coach in Brandon Staley and a god-awful defense. Even though he still had great weapons. Even though, yeah, he had that head coach, but could you get me more than, I don't know, 0 playoff wins? And your 1 playoff appearance, you're the quarterback of a team that blows a 27-0 lead to the Jaguars? Is that fair to say? But we gave Justin Herbert a pass because we looked at it and we said, okay, we see the talent is there. We see the physical capabilities and abilities this guy has. He just doesn't have the right guy around him or the right guy coaching him. He's got Jim Harbaugh. Now I'm going to hold Justin Herbert to a different standard. Now I'm going to hold the Chargers to a different standard. Their defense is better. It's why I'm like, hey, Herbert got his guy. I know the receiving core isn't very good. I think they'll get a guy at the trade deadline. They can go on a run this year. I had them getting to the AFC title game and still do. Pick integrity. Okay. We give a lot of quarterbacks a lot of passes for what they don't have, but all of a sudden with Dak Prescott, it's like we turn our brains off and say, hey, I know the offensive line is awful. I know the receiving core is literally, I say this over and over again, If you take CeeDee Lamb off the Dallas Cowboys, they're the New England Patriots. Name me a Dallas Cowboys receiver. Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Brooks, throw out any guy and say, oh yeah, by far the best receiver on the Patriots. Like clear number one, not even close. I'd make a case. He's not, I don't think he's a special player, but that Polk kid, I think Jalen Polk is the guy for the Patriots who had a nice game against the Texans on Sunday. Could I make a case he'd be the Cowboys' number two? Brandon Cooks had one 100-yard receiving game last year. And folks are like, man, Brandon Cooks is number two. Brandon Cooks wasn't that good. Brandon Cooks wasn't even second on the Cowboys in receiving. That was Jake Ferguson, who's fine, just like Hunter Henry is fine. This isn't to, and listen, Troy Aikman said it in that clip that we just played. It's not to say, this isn't to say, that this means Dak Prescott is, making excuses, whatever the case may be. It's just to say, what's he got to work with? We all agree Mike McCarthy is probably going to get fired unless the Cowboys do something crazy, make a playoff run, which I don't think any of us think that they're going to do. We give quarterbacks that are better than Dak pass. I mean, and it's why I bagged on Jerry Jones the way I have. If you're going to pay Dak like you believe that he is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, could you put a Super Bowl caliber roster around him, kind of like the Ravens did and the Chiefs did, and Cincinnati doesn't really. They're kind of cheap. Like in the past, the Bills have tried to. Go back to that 2022 offseason. Buffalo went all in, baby, to try and, unlike, Jerry said he was trying to. We've seen plenty of teams in the past go all in, so to speak. Jimmy Garoppolo at one time, folks, was one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. They got to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm going to talk about the Niners later in the show. Their big Super Bowl rematch against Kansas City. It drives me crazy. Like I hear a lot of folks like Troy Aikman who say, hey, I'm watching the tape and this thing is wrong with the Cowboys and this is wrong and the defense is bad and they're beat up and Jerry put together a god-awful roster. Mike McCarthy's on the hot seat and the offensive line is good, but Dak Prescott, you got to carry him to the finish line. Folks, do you realize that if Dak Prescott was not at the Cowboys, you do realize they'd be 1-5, right? Like we can agree on that, right? Their only win Dallas would have this year is against the Cleveland Browns, right? They smoked Cleveland because Deshaun, he's probably the worst quarterback in football. They get smoked. That loss will get more confusing by the day. They get smoked by the Saints. Okay, week 3, Dak basically put the roster on his back in the fourth quarter just to make it close. They got smoked by a far better Ravens team. Week 4, they beat the Giants. When New York moved the football very well, it took Dak Prescott. I think he had a pass rating in the 110s, 120s without any turnovers just to survive that game against New York. Week 5 after that, it takes Dak Prescott playing hero ball twice, recovering a fumble off just a devastating Rico Dowdle fumble at the goal line, punched out by Landon Roberts, and then followed by 2 plays later by a game-winning touchdown to somebody called Jalen Tolbert. And then they obviously get smoked by a miles better Lions team. These are all facts. And it really bugs me when I hear the discussion around Dak. I'm not trying to act like he's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Burrow. To me, those guys, Mahomes is by himself, and then there's those next 3. CJ Stroud's doing all he can to join that category and could very well by the end of the season. But after that, Dak's in that next tier objectively. He's in that tier with guys like Justin Herbert. Yeah, Justin Herbert, far better than Dak, right? Even though he's literally 0-2 against Dak with 2 less playoff wins in 1 playoff appearance in his career. But we gave Herbert a pass, by the way, as we should, because we watched the games, because we were objective, because we saw the Chargers, said the talent is there with their quarterback, but we simply do not believe in their head coach who makes egregiously bad errors in big situations. Don't we criticize Mike McCarthy for the same? Appreciate Troy for seeing this. And by the way, Troy's been critical of Dak in the past. Like if you watch back in the day, Fox games and now ESPN games with Joe Buck, Troy Aikman as a duo, Troy Aikman's been critical of Dak throughout his career. If Dak deserves it. If Dak doesn't play well, Troy's like, hey, Dak missed that thrower. Hey, Dak's got to be, to lock in. And, I feel like we are pretty nuanced. I mean, listen, fan is short for fanatic, as my man Colin Cowherd would say. We tend to be reasonable generally on a lot of quarterback discussions. And with Dak Prescott, it's like logic walks out the back door and drives to Vegas or something to gamble. I don't know what happens. Maybe it's really just as simple as star in the helmet. Maybe that's all it is. We all agree Jerry puts together a crappy roster. We all agree McCarthy's in the hot seat and is an average at best head coach. We all agree the Cowboys' weapons core outside of CeeDee Lamb is terrible. We agree the offensive line is terrible, and we agree the defense is terrible. Hey, Dak, carry the day. Make us a legit contender. It's not realistic. I'm not sure Mahomes probably could drag it to an NFC championship game. No other quarterback can make this work. I will die on that hill. No other. Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Stroud, throw any quarterback you want. I mean, Houston was a mess, but Stroud did have weapons. Stroud did have D'Amico Ryans. I'm telling y'all. And it's why, and then we'll move on to the Jets. It's why I got so angry, to be completely honest, at Dak for staying. I'm like, oh my gosh, Dak, you've dragged Dallas as far as their ceiling could go, with the exception of 2022. That's that playoff loss to the 49ers, the one in San Francisco. I said the next day, and I've said since, that one was on Dak. Receivers separated, defense played well. That was on Dak. He deserves the sole, I shouldn't say the sole blame. Everybody deserves blame. Dak deserves the majority of the blame for that playoff loss to San Francisco. Against Green, you say, well, what about Green Bay? Everybody's blaming against Green Bay. By the way, had Dak Prescott played the best game of his career, they probably still would have lost. I think the Packers punted like twice in that game. Right, so it is Dallas to win that game would have had to score almost every drive, touchdowns on almost every drive. So it's not that he doesn't deserve blame for it; it's that he doesn't deserve the lion's share of the blame. So Dak has taken Dallas to their ceiling. Take out the year he got hurt and the year he played bad against the Niners in that second playoff matchup. Taking their ceiling every year as far as he could get them, as far as frankly most quarterbacks could get them. I mean, the sky's falling in Dallas, and they're 3-3. I mean, it's because Dak got him there. The win against the Giants, and more importantly, that win against the best defense of football, my Pittsburgh Steelers. This conversation really doesn't rage me. I'm not going to lie to you. Here's what also gets on my nerves just a little bit. And for some reason, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say I watched a different game on Monday Night Football. I don't want to say, maybe I've just been consuming the sport in a different way than other people are. Maybe that's it. Maybe I just view the game differently. I don't know. You do get that the Jets season is over if they lose Sunday, right? Like, they're done. If they lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they fall to 2-5, their season is over. Bryson, how can you say that so confidently? It's October. Exactly. It is October. And here's what I know about the New York Jets, is that statistically, Aaron Rodgers has been an average quarterback for 3 years. I won't do the whole guys that have thrown for 300 yards more recently than Aaron. We don't have an extra minute and a half just to devote to that. Maybe in the future we will. But right now, and here's what I also know about the New York Jets, is the simple fact that they're basically the same offense. Think about this, folks. The same offense as a year ago. Same squad. Except they have Aaron Rodgers and now Devontae Adams. And can we show you what they've done through 6 games compared to last year? Oh, it's basically the exact same team. Same offense, rather. Same points per game. This year's Jets average more yards per game. Same yards per play. This Jets team has 1 fewer turnover, 15 more penalties, and a worse record. Think about that. The Zach Wilson Jets, through 6 games, had a better record than the Aaron Rodgers Jets through the first 6 games of this year. It's almost as if Aaron actually isn't that good anymore. It's almost as if the New York Jets, who have been bad basically all of my life, aren't a very good football team. It's almost as if that it took a Hail Mary at the end of the first half just to get to 20 at home. And it's almost as if, should the Jets drop this game to Pittsburgh? And I mean, the Jets are favored in this game. Obviously, you'll see it later on my picks. It's like, oh yeah, the Jets absolutely should be favored against the Steelers. There's no question about it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, like, it's not like they haven't been, it's not like they haven't played together in 3 years. It's not like Devontae Adams has a bad, or at least a rough hamstring, and that Aaron literally hasn't been good in 3 years. I have been consuming New York Jets football rather very differently than most. Here's what I know about the Jets. They lose this game, they have to go 8-2 to just give themselves a shot to make the playoffs. Here's what I also know. If we think, because the Jets are not going to win this division, can we agree on that? The Jets are not catching Buffalo for the AFCs. Okay, we know the Patriots are bad. Miami, if and when Tua comes back, I don't think they'll have enough time to make up the ground that they'll have to make up. Buffalo, to me, is, for their flaws, and they just added Amari Cooper this week, which obviously bolsters their receiving core. Buffalo, to me, the clear favorite. Buffalo's up 2 games with the tiebreaker on the Jets, assuming the Bills beat the darn Titans, which they should, and say the Jets lose to the Steelers. That's 3 games down, and Buffalo is the tiebreaker. So forget the division. We're talking about making the playoffs. If you're 2-5, you're just trying to scrap and claw just to get to the finish line, just to get into some extra January football. Well, when you look at the potential non-division winners in the AFC, you know who's there? Team that just won last night, the Denver Broncos. Oh, Bryson, Denver. Oh, yeah, that same Denver team that went into New York on the East Coast. Denver, a West Coast team, in the rain. And they scored 1 touchdown. The Jets scored 0. They moved the ball better than the Jets did. And they end up winning that football game 10-9. So Denver's got the tiebreaker. And if the Steelers beat the Jets, they'll have a tiebreaker and a 3-game advantage, mind you. The Cincinnati Bengals, who have a far, far, far better quarterback than they do and an easier schedule. The Texans are going to win their division, the AFC South. But you look at the up and down the standings in the AFC, right? A potential playoff team. Looking at it right now. Chargers have a better quarterback, better coach, better roster. Colts have a great coach. I mean, we're talking about teams that have institutional advantages over the Jets and roster advantages of the Jets. Aaron is an average at best quarterback on a good day. Devontae Adams, I think, can still play. I think Devontae Adams is great. The problem is the quarterback that he played with in Green Bay, that guy's gone, never to be seen again. Breece Hall, listen, kudos to him. He finally had a big game against the Buffalo Bills, but what we've seen from him previously before that, he wasn't very good. Now, I think Breece Hall, again, is somewhat of a regression to the mean. I think we're going to see from Breece Hall moving forward. I don't think he's as good as what he's shown against the Bills, and I don't think he's as bad as what he's shown the first 5 games prior to that. But it's an offensive line that if Aaron has to get the ball out slower than 2 seconds, his passer rating is like in the low 70s. So like the translation, Jets O-line isn't very good, and Aaron can't move the way he used to. Jets lose this game, they'll have to go 8-2 down the stretch. Do we actually see them doing that? Like, be honest, do we actually see the Jets winning 8 of their last 10 games when their schedule has some of the following teams, okay? The Jets, so they have the Steelers on again, we're doing this under the premise that the Jets lose to my Steelers, okay? Later on the schedule, they have the Houston Texans. They're going to lose, especially on a short week. At Arizona, a team that could score a lot of points. Jets might win that game. Colts, great coach, far better coach. Same with Seattle Seahawks, okay? Same with the Los Angeles Rams. I think the Rams are about to get hot. We'll see. Then Buffalo again. Like, these are all, and you say, well, Bryson, there's some Miamis in there. There's some Jacksonvilles. Yeah, and there were some, I say this in air quotes, there were some Denvers in there. Games that they were, in theory, supposed to win as an over-touchdown favorite, and they weren't able to get the job done. Maybe because they don't have a good coaching staff, quarterback, or offense. Listen, I've watched coverage all week post Davante Adams trade, and you would think this team is 5-1. You would think, man, they're 5-1. They just got Aaron's best buddy. They're 2-4, and could very easily be 1-5 because of that close win against the Will Levis Titans, when Levis basically, as he tends to do, by the way, handed them the game. I'm lost on this team. Maybe somebody's seeing something different than me, but I see a team that has the exact, almost identical offenses as last year, with an interim head coach and with the defense that, listen, has played elite football season long. I think is capable of doing that given the matchup, but they're not the Steelers, Vikings, Chiefs. They're not these squads that have, the 3, 4, 5 best defenses in football. And so, by the way, they're in division where they're a severe talent disadvantage, particularly at the quarterback position, to the Buffalo Bills. So this is not a playoff team, and it's not a good team. Like, that's why I had them at 7-10 before the season. And by the way, I said on my predictions, I thought there was a shot they could land Davante Adams because of course, the history with Aaron Rodgers that we're all aware of. Yeah, this isn't going to work long term with the Jets. Like, I'm shocked, and they may win this game. Who knows? I'm shocked that folks aren't covering this as Oh, if they lose, they're done. 2-5, you have a 6% chance to make the playoffs. Historically in the NFL. We think a team with an old quarterback, off an Achilles, who's clearly not the same player he used to be, even prior to the Achilles injury, with an average to below average offensive line, weapons that are good, but Garrett Wilson hasn't really popped off quite yet the way that Jets fans told me that he was going to, and Devontae and Aaron have not been together in 3 years. And oh, by the way, they have an interim head coach. All the signs say missed the playoffs, and yet it's not being covered as that. Listen, I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. If this was the old Aaron Rodgers, fine. I got you. It's nowhere near. Okay, he throws a pretty football. Okay, I bet you. I mean, I saw a Tom Brady did an ad campaign. I forget who it was for, and man, Tom still throws a gorgeous football in the air. Yeah, but Tom's not the same Tom that at 40. How old's Tom now? 47, 48 years old. I thought he wasn't even 40 when Tom was still probably the best quarterback in football at 40 years old. So I find a lot of the Jets commentary, to be frank, kind of delusional. Cowboy Up Podcast. What's up, my man? He says, good afternoon. Please subscribe to the Cowboy Up Podcast. I was on their show. What was it? Was it last week? I think it was a couple of weeks ago. No, it was last week. Had a great time with those guys. They have a fantastic show. Subscribe to it. Cowboy Up Podcast. I enjoyed talking to them about the Cowboys-Steelers game. Didn't enjoy having to relive a very painful experience with my guy Dak Prescott breaking my heart. And by the way, that's the only reason the Cowboys have a shot when it's all said and done. By the way, it should be noted, the Mets, as we're doing this live, they're up 8-2, top of the fourth inning. Unless the Dodgers go on some of these late inning spurts that they've been going on, with Shohei and Mookie Betts, Kike Hernandez, looks like we're getting a Game 6 in LA. Now, conventional wisdom will say, hey, Dodgers going to win, this series, because going back to LA, they got 2 home games. All I'll say is this. I remember the 2019 World Series. I get that's a totally different series 5 years ago. But remember when the Houston Astros were up 3-2 in that World Series, come back home, and I remember saying on my show at the time, Carving Up was very young at that point, but I was thinking, oh, it's a wrap. It's over. Houston's going to close out in Game 6. If they don't, they're going to wrap it up in Game 7. Washington ended up winning. I'm telling you. And I said this on a morning radio show that I'm on Monday and Friday. Shout out to Asher Addison. They do a fantastic job. Triple option. I'll put the link once we go on the air on Monday morning, because we'll have a ton of football to talk about. I will put the link to the show on there. But we were talking about today, and I've said this on the show that postseason baseball's pitching and vibes. It's pitching. Now, do I know if I trust the Mets pitching completely? Certainly their bullpen. Against that Dodgers lineup, don't know about that. Vibes. All it takes is that one offensive explosion to really get you in the groove of things. And clearly the Mets have found. I saw right before the show, I saw Pete Alonso hit a 3-run homer in the first. What else has happened? Basically a bunch of extra base hits. Lindor hit a triple in the third. So looks like the Mets, barring some sort of insane collapse, which I don't foresee, looks like we're going to get a Game 6, and that will be on Sunday night. Sunday night in LA. A Game 7 will be Monday night in Los Angeles. So, I had Mets in 6. Obviously, that's off the table now. But, excuse me, 2004 Red Sox came back from 3-0 against what was perceived as, now the Red Sox talent-wise were on the same level as those Yankees, but it's like, oh, the Yankees are up 3-0. That was still the curse of the Bambino. It's over. And the Red Sox pulled off the comeback herd around the world. And that documentary, by the way, I think is coming out next week. Is it like October 23rd on Netflix? Cannot wait to watch it. But there you go. So the Mets are very much alive. They listen, everybody act like, okay, the Dodgers threw this game. Now they may. I'm not saying they're not going to close out. They're an uber talented baseball team. Very easily lose Game 6 and Game 7. What's the old saying? Anything can happen in a Game 7. So you never know. But I still pick integrity. Still believe in the Mets. All right, going to go on a break, 1-minute break, but we'll be back for a big time segment of the Vol View, Tennessee and Alabama. Be back in a minute on Carving It Up Live. The Vol View. Cannot wait for it. Welcome back, everybody. Man, do we have a show for you on the Vol View tonight? So, if there's one thing that we know, if you're a college football fan, or a Tennessee fan, or an Alabama fan, if there's something different about that third Saturday in October, there's a certain bitterness and hatred that turns itself into intensity and physicality and grit and drive and trying to come away with that W against your most hated rival on your schedule. Tennessee, Alabama, there's been some classic matchups over the years. I think we may be potentially in store for another one. So let's get right into it. The Vol View, the third Saturday in October edition, begins and starts right now.
Football time in Tennessee.
Indeed it is. It is football time in Tennessee in the Vols. I mean, it doesn't get a whole heck of a lot better than this, at least in the regular season. Tennessee, Alabama from Neyland Stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm going to be in the building tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time for kickoff. And what's going to be, I'm wearing this orange shirt right now. You're going to see a lot of orange because Tennessee is doing an orange out across Neyland Stadium after doing the checkerboarded stadium last week against Florida. So for Tennessee, let's start with the Vols first and foremost because, of course, this is the Vol View. So what was a nail-biter, to say the very least. 23-17 overtime win against the Florida Gators in a game that Florida actually led at one point. Led at one point in this game by 10-0. Tennessee was able to, get some turnovers. They got an interception. Florida threw an interception within their own red zone, or they're back to their own end zone rather. The thing for Tennessee that I'm going to be looking out to see if it turns around. Nico Iamaleava's got to play a lot better than he has been. Now, in his defense, I think the last two games, particularly the game against Arkansas, was a matter of non-aggressive play calling, kind of playing not to lose. It was very much a Josh Heupel type game plan that you would see with Joe Milton at quarterback, right? Just, okay, take the occasional shot down the field, but we really don't trust him with his decision-making, overthrowing guys. We're going to ride Dylan Sampson and the run game and get to the finish. And, of course, coaching not to lose turned into just that, a loss against the Arkansas Razorbacks. So for Tennessee in this game, again, with Nico coming off the game, it's not impressive numbers whatsoever. 16 of 26, $169 through the air, 0 touchdowns, and an interception, a QBR of 17. So Nico did not play very well. Well, he's going to have to against, in what should be good news for Tennessee, an Alabama pass defense that has not been very good over the last 3 games. You look at what they did against Georgia in the second half of that game. In a game they had Georgia down 28-0. Turns out it turns into an Alabama win, 41 to 34, in a spot where it looked like the Tide had Georgia dead to rights. Okay, so you have that. You have the fact that Alabama, of course, lost to Vanderbilt. In Vanderbilt, right? 40 to 35. Jalen Milroe's great. Ryan Williams, the 17-year-old freshman phenom, doing his thing. But they couldn't stop Vanderbilt. Just like for large stretches of that game at home in Tuscaloosa, they could not stop South Carolina. And a game that Alabama won by 2. And yet and still, I cannot really figure this out to save my life. Tennessee and Alabama have had identical last 2 games. Like, to a T. They lose a game on the road they shouldn't have. I can make a strong case Bama's a lot worse. Vanderbilt's much better than expected this year. Vanderbilt, traditionally, and I don't even think this year, is better than Arkansas. Both teams losing games they should not have on the road, SEC games, in conference games, on the road, shouldn't have lost those. Both dropped in the rankings. They come right back, win a home game by the skin of their teeth against teams they're way better than. Wait a second. Alabama stays where they're at in the standings and Tennessee drops 4 spots? Or rather drops 3 spots? Go figure that. Maybe it's a Kalen DeBoer trust. I don't know. But what I also know about Alabama and Kalen DeBoer, who I love, top 5 coach of the country in my mind, his teams kind of play to their competition. If they're playing a Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt's got a shot to win, and of course did win. Or South Carolina. Or if they're playing one of the titans of college football, Georgia. Or you go back to a year ago when Kalen DeBoer was at Washington. A team like Oregon. A team like Texas. By golly gee, they're going to show up and they're going to play excellent football over the course of 60 minutes. But they can also lose games. And again, Washington was in a ton of close ones last year. So you have that component. So I think it's safe to say that the over-under for this game, I was a little shocked. I felt like this should have been a little bit higher. 56.5, I think it's going to be higher. I think you're going to see a lot of points. I think you're going to see a spot where Nico, listen, he realizes his shortcomings last week and to a certain degree in the Arkansas game, although, again, I think that was more of a play-calling issue. And for those saying, well, what about against Florida? Do you not think that was I don't. The shots were down the field for Squirrel White, for Thornton and others, and he just flat out missed them. He missed a lot of deep balls, again, i.e. somewhat resembling Joe Milton a season ago. Nico's got to hit those. I have to imagine he's worked with those guys during practice, after practice, and hitting those home run balls. Alabama tends to struggle against that. Tennessee receivers struggle with drops. You have to imagine, again, it's Thursday in October, brings out the best out of you. What I expect is for Tennessee to get out the gates hot. I could see Tennessee getting out to a 10-0 lead, 14-0 lead, something like that. But Alabama being Alabama and Jalen Milroe being the playmakers that he is, the Heisman candidate and hopeful that he is, well, he's going to make plays. He's going to get Alabama right in this game. I think this is going to be a spot where we see a back and forth, lot of scoring in the second half. Maybe goes quiet in the second quarter. And then similar to Alabama, Georgia, late third quarter on, it turns into a who gets the ball last type of situation. I think Tennessee's offense has been waiting for their themselves to resemble the 2022 team, at least the 2022 offense with a great defense to boot. Again, let's be 100% real about this. That defense won the game against Florida. Full stop. Okay. Forcing turnovers, knocking Florida back. They forced a fumble down on the goal line. They were able to force Florida into, not force Florida. Florida committed an unforced error penalty, cost them a field goal at the end of the half. That defense did everything it could and ultimately helped us get the job done last week against the Gators. As the old saying goes, great offense beats great defense any day of the week. And so for that reason, Bama's going to put up over 30, and so is Tennessee. And for that reason, because I think it's going to be a who gets the ball last type of game, I got the Vols, baby. 34-31. Tennessee, take Tennessee plus the 3 and they'll win this puppy outright. Definitely take the over on the. I cannot believe the over-under was 56.5. To me, this is clearly an over spot right here. Tennessee 34, Alabama 31. Not as high scoring as the 52-49 crazy game of the year type of situation in 2022. That said, high scoring, a lot of points. Tennessee gets out the gates early, feeds on the home energy. Let me tell you something, y'all. I'm going to be in Neyland Stadium tomorrow. That place is going to be rocking for 60 minutes. The earth may shake, just like it did when Tennessee took down Alabama for the first time in 15 years back 2 seasons ago. It's going to be an orange out. It's going to be a lot of energy. And it's going to be a good time, no question about it. Tennessee 34, Alabama 31. This is kind of an elimination game in terms of SEC title contention, and could put you really very much on the brinks of potentially missing out on the 12-team college football playoff. Both teams are desperate. Both teams know they got to get the job done. I think if this game is in Tuscaloosa, I wouldn't feel the best about it. And again, I'm certainly nervous for this spot, given how well coached and how loaded a roster that Alabama is, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. But when it's all said and done, the Vols, led by a breakout game by Nico Iamaleava, will get the job done. Dylan Sampson will do his thing as well, cash in the red zone. Josh Heupel will call a great game. I thought he called a great game against Florida. Nico just missed some of the throws. Tennessee will get it done. 34-31 against Alabama and keep our hopes alive, not only for a college football playoff berth, but to potentially make the SEC title game in Atlanta. Keep our hopes alive. So that is it for this week's edition of the Vol View.
in Tennessee.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The late, great John Ward always takes us in and out of the Vol View. Again, I've always thought about, and then we'll obviously move on to NFL picks. I've always thought as a Tennessee fan, and again, feel free to, listen, I understand if y'all like tune me out for this. I'm like totally big orange nerding out right now, but I'll just say this. I've always thought with all the, and if you don't know who John Ward is, Google some of his calls over the years. It will give you goosebumps, even if you're not a Tennessee fan. The guy was an absolute legend behind the mic on the radio for very, 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 very many years in Tennessee, in Knoxville. I've always thought that when Tennessee beat Alabama on that walk-off field goal in 2022, what would John Ward's call have been? Right? He had the pandemonium reigns when Florida missed a field goal in 98, the year Tennessee won a national championship. I've always thought, like, man, what would be his call on that spot? And even throughout that game, because there were so many big plays. Jalen Hyatt, who, by the way, Giants, Brian Dable, get Jalen Hyatt the football. He can make plays for you. He had 5 touchdowns and over 200 yards in that game against Alabama. It was the game of his life. Is one of the greatest wide receiver performances in Tennessee history. I've always thought what his call would be, but definitely excited for tomorrow. It's going to be a close game throughout, but give me Tennessee 34-31. All right, NFL picks. And before we get to NFL picks, let's review how I've done thus far. Again, this does not count last night. I never count the Thursday night game. I always go, okay, to this point, prior to the week starting, again, Thursday night, last night, the Broncos doing what I thought they'd do, winning and covering and beating the Saints. This is what I did last week. Best week of the season. One of the best weeks I've ever had predicting games in my life. 13-1, a 92.9% accuracy rating, I guess, or win percentage, if you will. And then against the spread, 11-2-1. I believe the Commanders and Ravens game ended up being a push. But I felt great about my picks last week. Ended up going 13-1. In totality, win-loss record, I'm right about 64% of the time against the spread. A little lower, about 55% of the time. I'd like to bump that up as time goes on. And in my 3 favorite segments that you will see throughout this, Bryson, Bleak, Bet, 3-3. That's about what it's supposed to look like because it's the one game I have zero confidence in predicting, but you got to predict them all. Upset of the week, 3-3. Love my upset of the week this week. And then finally, if I were a bet man, you may see that and say, 6-10-1. Not great. Here's what I will tell you. Okay, I got off at the start of the season, and I was 2-8, I think, through the first 4 weeks of the year, 2-8. Let's see, let me go back and check. 2-9, 2-9-1 on if I were a bet man. Since then, I've been really good, right? 4-1 and 1. So I feel good about my picks this week. Matter of fact, I feel great about my picks this week. If I were a bet man, is going to crush. And one theme, then we'll get into the predictions. One theme that you're going to continuously see this week, week 7, is the week of the underdog. And so let's get started on our picks right now. We're going to start. I'm going to try and get the accent right this time. Across the pond. British audience, was that fine from a guy from Tennessee? Anyways, it's in London. New England Patriots, Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville's a 6-point favorite in the spot. So these are 2 1-win teams. I've never found, honest to God, a matchup in week 7, or at least mid-season, between 2 1-win teams more compelling than this. Like, relative to what these 2 teams' record are combined 2-10, I find this matchup fascinating for a number of reasons. So on the Patriots side, you got Drake May, who, all things considered, I'll play pretty darn well against a great Texans defense in his debut. Yeah, he made mistakes. Rookies are going to make mistakes. Steve Bo Nix's debut, Caleb Williams' debut, Jaden Daniels, I don't think that made that many mistakes, but you get the picture. Right? He made his mistakes, but he was able to push the ball down the field again. As I said earlier on the show, the Patriots are just the Cowboys without Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb in terms of offensive. They're not very good. And he was able to make that kid, Jalen Polk, viable. Throw the ball deep down the field. Listen, they're in a spot against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who do not have a good defense whatsoever. One of the worst in football. But for Jacksonville, there's a desperate. It's not that both teams don't want to win this game. It's that Jacksonville is desperate. This is Doug Peterson. He's coaching for his job, folks. If the Jaguars lose this game, Doug Peterson will be flying to London by himself. He'll be flying commercial back home to the United States. Okay, so this could be really disastrous for him. If Jacksonville loses, it raises potentially even more questions about Trevor Lawrence. And so for that reason, I'm going to take the Jaguars to win this game. Barely cover. I don't feel great about the 6 points. My rationale for that is, well, Jacksonville tends to be really good in London. Last week was an exception because they ran into a buzzsaw with the great Bears defense and a Caleb Williams that is lighting the world on fire right now. But give me Jacksonville. Coach's job is on the line. He's going to put together the best game plan possible. And let's not forget the Patriots, as good as Drake May looked last week, and I think will look potentially in spots on Sunday against a bad Jacksonville defense. It's still probably the worst roster in football. So in that spot, give me the Jaguars 27-20 over the New England Patriots. Moving on to the Tennessee Titans and the Buffalo Bills going to our early window of games on Sunday. Buffalo, this spread was as high as 9.5. This line was as high as 9.5. It's gotten bet down to 8.5. So I kind of went back and forth on this. What I decided was, you know what? Josh Allen, Amari Cooper, they're going to continue to try to build a rapport in this game moving forward. Tennessee actually has a pretty good defense, so that gave me some cause for pause. Here's what I thought about, though. Will Levis is the quarterback. And anytime Will Levis is the quarterback, face a guy like, listen, Josh Allen, we used to view, and certainly I did, I've been as critical as anybody of quarterbacks throw picks, at least he took the chance. My issue with Josh Allen was he throw picks, so it's where it's like, okay, nothing good could have came out of that. Right? It's a low reward, high risk type of throws that he used to put on display. Now, my criticism of Allen is I almost feel like, and in large part, this is because of the lack of attempts throwing the football, because the Bills' run game has been so good. I feel like he's playing almost too conservative. Listen, my prediction is he'll throw his first pick against the Titans, but it'll be trying to make a play to Amari Cooper specifically. So I've got the Buffalo Bills winning this game pretty comfortably. They do cover the 8.5, 30-16 over Tennessee. Listen, if Mason Rudolph, I keep saying this, I feel like with the Titans, it's somewhat similar to a lesser degree like the Colts. Like, if Mason Rudolph was starting over Will Levis, I would absolutely love Tennessee plus 8.5. Will Levis is, along with Deshaun Watson, probably the two worst quarterbacks in football. So, for that reason, facing Josh Allen, the Bills in Buffalo, I feel pretty confident about this. Give me the Bills minus the 8.5 to win this game, 30-16. There's some, and I've talked about throughout this week, there's some must-watch games from again, if you want to say Jaguars-Patriots isn't must-watch, I don't blame you. I can't wait to watch it just because of the storylines and because I need something for my man Trevor Lawrence. But come on, Trevor. Is that there are some awesome games in Week 7. This is one of them. Houston Texans, Green Bay Packers from Lambeau Field in the early window at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12, Wisconsin time. Packers are 2.5-point favorites. So these days in Vegas, the way they set lines, home teams, honestly, at this point, don't really get the 3. They get 2.5. In some cases, they get 2. So they are basically saying evenly matched, and I could not agree more with them. So my take on this is I feel like they're the equivalent of each other, just in opposite conferences. Now, Jordan Love's older than C.J. Stroud, but I love both coaches. Matt LaFleur, D'Amico Ryans, again, Ryan's younger than LaFleur. Both have proven themselves to be tremendous. I was skeptical on LaFleur at first, but once he was able to do what he did at the second half last season with Love, particularly this year with Malik Willis, who I didn't think was a playable NFL quarterback, I'm bought in on Matt LaFleur. I'm obviously bought in on D'Amico Ryans. Great coaches, young coaches with bright futures. Great young quarterbacks with bright futures. Stacked wide receiving cores on both sides. The Packers might have the deepest wide receiving core in football, okay? You got Christian Watts, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, who I think is injured potentially. They got 2 great tight ends. One of them, unfortunately, Musgrove, is injured right now, and I really like both teams' offensive lines. Defensively, I think the Texans are a better team than Green Bay. This, to me, is the classic home field decides it. And for that reason, I'm going to go with the Packers to win this game 27-22. Listen, Jordan Love in his last couple of games, at Lambeau, 8 touchdown passes, 4 against Minnesota, 4 on Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. Would not bet this game whatsoever. The Texans win. I won't be shocked in the slightest. But listen, this is a spot where I feel like the Texans are the Packers, the AFC, and vice versa. If this game were playing in Houston, I would almost certainly pick the Texans. Home field decides it. Green Bay's comfortable at home. Jordan Love's playing unbelievable football at home. And again, some of it is defensively for Houston. I did see some things I didn't love in that game against the Patriots. Again, 21 is fine against New England. You'd like that to be a little bit lower, closer to like 10, 15 points. But give me the Green Bay Packers. So give me the Green Bay Packers, rather, by a final score of 27-22. It is now time for my upset of the week. Missed it last week, and I'm going to go against the same team. Give me the New York Football Giants, who've come through for me twice this year on Upset of the Week, 23-22 over their rival, the Philadelphia Eagles. Giants 23, Eagles 22. Obviously, take the Giants +3. Here's why. Maya Angelou has one of the greatest quotes of all time, and we all know it. Someone shows you who they are, believe them. And here's what I know about the Philadelphia Eagles. They are objectively one of the worst teams in the NFL going back to midway through last season. They got the third worst record in the National Football League. Third worst record in the NFL in that stretch. Nick Sirianni's job is on the line. Matter of fact, I think if and when they lose this game, Sirianni's gone. Now, will they promote Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio? Who knows? But this is a spot where Philadelphia has shown us who they are defensively since the middle of last season. One of the worst past seasons in football. And you say, Bryson, did you see the Giants against Cincinnati? Yes, I did see them against Cincinnati. Here's what I do know. Is that it looks like Malik Neighbors should be back this week. I do feel good about that. Okay, you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a team that has been bad in the first quarter offensively, like really bad. Cannot get off to quick starts. That to me is a clear sign of a coaching deficiency. Brian Dable, Nick Sirianni. Now Sirianni is the far better roster, but you can make the case so Seattle against the New York Giants, and they went to Seattle despite a defensive touchdown going back 100 yards that cost. It was basically a 14-point turnaround in the first half of that game against the Seahawks. Giants still won that game. Daniel Jones played pretty well. They got their weapons back. Giants quietly have a great defensive line, can get to the quarterback consistently, and explosive offense like the Bengals have been. Could not get going whatsoever against this Giants defense. So why on earth should I think Philadelphia will? Upset of the week. Give me the Giants over the Eagles. You may say, 3 points. Listen, is this a spot where you could see the Eagles losing? Most would say no. I say yes. The matchups favor the Giants in the spot. So give me New York 23-22. And I think Nick Sirianni, the start of Monday's show, is not the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, especially, assuming, of course, if they lose this game. This is about as good as it gets for a 1 o'clock window game. It's the Detroit Lions. I hesitate to say my Lions, even though because I'm a Steelers fan, but they're kind of my Lions because I've bought them for about a year and a half, 2 years now. NFC North battle. Detroit Lions, undefeated Minnesota Vikings from Minnesota. Vikings in this game favored -1.5. Minnesota's coming off a bye. What do we know about teams coming off a bye? If they have a great coach, they tend to be quite good. Here's the problem, though, for the Vikings. That Sam Darnold come back down to earth game is imminent. Kudos to him for how he's played through the first 5 games this year. You're not going to bag him for it at all. But you saw in that second half against the Jets when it looked like the Vikings had that game in hand against a bad Jets offense, bad Jets team in general. 17-0. Sam Darnold turns the football over. Aaron Rodgers gets it going a little bit. The Jets defense is getting stops. You say, Bryson, Aiden Hutchinson's gone. Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson is gone. Detroit's secondary has one of the best safety duos in the National Football League. With Kirby Joseph is his name. I think it's Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. Is it Kirby Joseph? I'm forgetting his name. It's escaping in my mind. Fantastic safety for the Lions. Detroit's got a better secondary. It's getting better by the week. A good interior defensive line. Aaron Jones may not even play this game for Minnesota. He may not. He's certainly banged up. It's a game time decision. And if there's anything I know about the Detroit Lions, as great as this Vikings defense is, who do you stop? Like when they stop the Niners are missing pieces. When they stop the Texans are missing pieces. This is to me the clearly best offense in the league. Best O-line. You got a top 10 receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown. An amazing deep threat, Jameson Williams. Top 10 tight end, Sam Laporta, bordering on top 5. Best running back duo in football, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. There's not much not to like about this team. And again, it's the best offensive coordinator in the league. Dan Campbell's got his guys ready to play. I see it being pseudo-close, but I think the final score actually may not replicate what this game actually is. So I'm going to take the Lions plus the 1.5 to win this game by a final score of 26-20 over the Minnesota Vikings. Lions win this game, hand Minnesota their first loss. I'm not saying this is going to put Minnesota into a free fall and they miss the playoffs. I'm not saying that, but they need a team to kind of bring them back down to earth, particularly Sam Darnold back down to earth. I think Detroit's the team to do that. They're playing inspired after losing their leader of their defense, Aiden Hutchinson. They'll get the job done, do what they got to do, get a couple turnovers off Sam Darnold, and offensively, the Lions will do what the Lions always do, and that's a lot of points and get a lot of yards. Give me the Lions 26-20. Obviously, Detroit plus 1.5. It is now time for Bryson's Bleak Bet. It is the one game every week that I have absolutely zero confidence in predicting, but hey, you got to predict them all. I went back and forth on this up until literally the start of the show. Seattle, Atlanta, Seahawks, Falcons. Falcons are a 3-point favorite at home. So here's what I'm looking at. So y'all know I believe in the Falcons a lot, certainly as a division winner, as a team that can maybe make a sneaky run to the NFC title game, because I like Kirk Cousins. I like Kirk Cousins behind a great offensive line with the weapons he's got. Here's the issue, though, for Atlanta that I struggle with, and it's a defense problem on both sides. Atlanta's defense got, in some cases, I don't want to say torched, but Carolina, with Andy Dalton and those weapons, Carolina moved the ball against Atlanta. Until Andy Dalton threw that pick in his own territory, I'm like, okay, Carolina's got a shot to at least cover in this game. I think it was something like 6 points in favor of Atlanta on the road. Like, Carolina may cover it and blow this for me. Oh, no, then Andy Dalton throws a pick, and it's over. But the Panthers moved the football well. Here's what we know about Seattle. Geno Smith has not been all that great. 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Here's what we do know about Seattle. Arguably the best wide receiver trio in the league with Metcalf, Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And most importantly, Seattle's got a bunch of defensive starters coming back, led by Reek Wallen. I think Reek Wallen's going to make a big impact in this game. Seattle getting some, basically all the guys Seattle's got coming back from injury on the defensive side of the football, which, of course, Mike McDonald specializes in. Bryce's Bleak bet, I'm going to go the upset. Seattle beating Atlanta on the road. Listen, Atlanta's won a lot of close games. They're bound to lose one eventually. Seattle wins. That's an incorrect spelling of Seahawks. I apologize. But Seattle wins this game 24-20 over the Atlanta Falcons. I don't feel great about it, but I'll stick with it. All right, moving on to our very first game. My favorite segment every week. It is called
Bettin Man.
If I were a Bettin Man, I like divisional games, folks. I do, even if there seems to be a perceived mismatch. AFC North, Cincinnati Bengals, Cleveland Browns. The Bengals on the road are a 5.5-point favorite. I like the Browns. Cleveland, I don't hate you all the time. Plus 5.5, and here's why. Joe Burrow in his career, 1-5 against the Cleveland Browns in his career with a pass rating of 86. So the Joe Burrow that's deadly accurate, wins a lot, that's not who he is against the Cleveland Browns. So you say, Cleveland Browns defense. Here's what I know about them. I believe it's Grant Delpit leading the team in touchdowns. I'm not kidding. Grant Delpit, a defensive player, leads the team in touchdowns. And one of them was on special teams, so we get that. What about Bryson? Browns lost Amari Cooper. Yeah, they did lose Amari Cooper, but they still have a great running game. It appears Nick Chubb could be coming back from injury. Yes, Deshaun Watson's terrible. I get it. And Joe Burrow's fantastic. Listen, and by the way, this does not mean the Browns are on the level of the Bengals. But 1-5 against Cleveland. By the way, are we going to act like in all 5 of those games that the Browns were world beaters? Of course not. Okay, a lot of those losses came in 2021, 2022. Browns make the playoffs either of those seasons. They weren't that good. So for whatever reason, the familiarity, Kevin Stefanski's still a great coach. Guys, the Browns almost beat Philadelphia in Philadelphia last week. It was my upset of the week. So I listen, divisional matchup, familiarity. These two coaches know each other very well going back to the 2020 season. I'm going to take Cincinnati to win this game. It would have been my upset of the week if I picked Cleveland. 20-17 again. Burrow just now, a year ago, after losing his first 5, got a W over Cleveland. So I'll take Cincinnati, and I've said they're going to get a little bit of a hot streak here in terms of winning. That does not necessarily mean, if you look at the Giants game on Sunday and what I think this game's going to be in Cleveland, Ohio, that all these games are going to be pretty. Give me Cincinnati, 20-17. If I were a bet man, take the Browns plus 5.5. Moving on to a game I'm sure most people aren't going to watch, but I find pseudo-fascinating in terms of who's not playing. You got the Miami Dolphins, and you've got the Indianapolis Colts. So, by the way, Colts at home favored -3. Doesn't look like Tua Tagovailoa is going to play for at least the next 2 to 3 weeks. Here's where I'm a little bit torn in this game. Anthony Richardson's going to play for the Colts. If Joe Flacco were playing, and we've seen Flacco basically was the guy who led the Colts to holding off my Steelers back in week 4. Okay, played exceptionally well against Jacksonville. It just took my man Trevor Lawrence coming up clutch at the end of that game. And the week after that, played great against the Tennessee Titans. A little, the occasional, what are you doing, Jim? Okay, it worked. Touchdown pass to, I think it was Michael Pittman Jr. in the end zone in Tennessee. So we get all those things. Joe Flacco's a better quarterback today than Anthony Richardson, but I don't necessarily blame the Colts for starting Richardson because they got to see what they got in a guy they drafted with the 4th overall pick in the 23 draft. As Shane Steichen wants to see, what is he? I got to get him on the field. He hasn't played that much football in the last couple of seasons, of course, going back to his injuries last year and this year. It's Mike McDaniel off a bye against a Colts defense I haven't trusted from the jump. I will hesitantly, again, it's the week of the underdog, take the Dolphins +3 to win outright, 19-16. I don't really love either defense, but I sure as heck don't love Snoop Huntley and Anthony Richardson, who, again, Richardson, we know the talent he brings to the table. I could see him making one wow throw in this game against Miami. He's just simply not an accurate player, and he misses the layups, and that's awfully concerning if you're a fan of the Indianapolis Colts. Give me the Dolphins in this game. Off a bye week. Great coaches off a bye. Generally, you tend to take those guys. So give me Miami by a final score of 19-16. In the afternoon window, Carolina Panthers, Washington Commanders. So Washington favorite by a lot, 9.5 at home. So again, going back to a little bit what I said earlier, in the fact that I took not only Seattle and the points, but to flat out beat Atlanta, is Carolina did move the football. And I guess we're going to find out this week, is it that Carolina's offense is productive? Nobody's going to mistake it for the offense. They're playing the Washington Commanders. But what do we know about Washington? Their defense isn't very good. They give up a lot of big plays. Andy Dalton, Xavier Leggetti can make plays down the red zone to get them big plays down the field in general. I struggle with Washington, man, because I love Jaden Daniels out of the draft. I think the partnership with him and Cliff Kingsbury, the weapons they have in Washington, love it. I don't get it. Again, some of it's a personnel problem going back to last year. Ron Rivera wasn't able to get anything out of this defense. That's putting it mildly. But neither is Dan Quinn. That makes me think the players simply aren't good enough. Listen, Washington's good. They may very well make the playoffs. They may win the NFC East before it's all said and done. Got 9.5 for a team that has, over the course of a long season, proven itself. I'm going to take Carolina in the points. Commanders win outright. Don't get me wrong. Commanders win outright 31-23. But just in the spot, man, 9.5's a lot, bro. Andy Dalton excited for the pick six. Played fine. Played about like a backup. Generally plays with a good backup, and he makes big plays down the field. Andy Dalton's got a nice arm. Xavier Leggetti can make plays, and I like what I saw from him against Atlanta. So Carolina plus 9.5. Washington to win outright 31-23. Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Rams. This is almost enough Ira Bettin Man game. I love the Rams as spot -7, and here's why. So I don't know if there's a team in the NFL where the vibes are worse than the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, Devontae Adams traded after the situation, obviously, with his head coach liking a post on Instagram, Antonio Pierce liking a post on Instagram that's talking crap about Devontae. It's a bad dynamic there. He gets moved. He looks over the moon. I don't think it's going to work with the Jets, but he looks over the moon to be with his buddy Aaron Rodgers in New York. Meanwhile, they benched Gardner Minshew for Aiden O'Connell, who was disastrous, shocker, against my Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And also, Detroit Lions, sadly, knock on wood for them, lost their pass rusher, Aiden Hutchinson, for the season. There happens to be another elite pass rusher across the country in Sin City named Max Crosby, who's really, really good on Aiden Hutchinson's level, probably at this stage a little bit better than Hutchinson is. And he was talking about the other day, did you see that quote? Where he said, I'm not here to play on a rebuilding team. I want to win. Detroit could sure use him. And by the way, we're not even sure if Max Crosby is going to play in this matchup. Jacoby Myers could be out as well for the Raiders. Meanwhile, for the Rams, listen, they're beat up. They're 1-4. I get it. All one team's not created alike. The Patriots aren't very good. The Titans aren't very good. Looking like the Jacksonville Jaguars, for as much as I believe them before the season, they probably aren't a very good football team. They're about to fire their coach in all likelihood. That's not the case with the Rams. Sure, it's the worst start in Sean McVay's coaching career, but it's Sean McVay and Matt Stafford out of a bye. Again, great coaches off a bye. Love them in these spots. And by the way, Cooper Kupp may play in this game. That hasn't been the topic of large discussion because this isn't a game on a lot of people's radars. Cooper Kupp very well may be back on Sunday for this game. And frankly, even if he's not, the Raiders defense hasn't been nearly as good as it was in the second half a year ago. Give me the Los Angeles Rams off a bye big. 28-13 over the Las Vegas Raiders. Rams -7. Listen, this might be like a Raiders home game because we know the Rams and the Chargers at SoFi don't have much of a home field advantage at all. And the Raiders, for as bad as their team is, fans are loyal as heck. Could give them kudos and credit on that, but still, Rams -7, 28-13 over the Las Vegas Raiders. It's now time for another game for
Bettin Man.
Tyra Bettin Man. Super Bowl rematch. Kansas City Chiefs, San Francisco 49ers from the Bay Area. Niners are favored by 2 points. I find that line to be outrageous. Patrick Mahomes is arguably the greatest underdog quarterback in the history of the National Football League, and the numbers back it up. He's 10-3 in terms of win-loss. He's 11-1-1 against the spread as an underdog. Chiefs score 32 points per game when Mahomes is an underdog. He throws for about 326 yards, 8.4 yards per pass. Touchdown interception ratio 38-11. He cooks a lot of defenses in a pass rating of 112. And by the way, Patrick Mahomes has won his last 4 games as an underdog. All 4 of them, if memory serves me correctly, being playoff games, including against the 49ers team that he's 4-0 against. Also, Andy Reid, greatest coach in the history of the NFL off a bye. 21-4. Like Andy Reid, it's kind of been the stuff of legend. Andy Reid in September and off a bye, going back to his days even with the Philadelphia Eagles as their head coach, is almost automatic. He's as great as they come. Listen, San Francisco's a great team. This has more on the Niners side than the Chiefs side, but it's so hilarious how much this reminds me of when these two teams played 2 years ago. In the 2022 season, the game was in San Francisco. The Niners were 3-3. But the difference was the Chiefs had a far more explosive offense, and I don't think Kansas City is all of a sudden, without their 2 best receivers, going to score a lot of points in this game. And by the way, without their starting running back as well. What I do feel like is confident in is that Kansas City's defense has held, on average, every team they played this year to around 10 points below their season average points per game at the time that they played them. So with San Francisco, they had an explosive game against Seattle. Brock Purdy was unbelievable. George Kittle did his thing. I get Super Bowl rematch. I get that Kyle Shanahan, by the way, Kyle Shanahan as a coordinator and head coach, 0-7 against Andy Reid in his career. So keep that in consideration. He's never beaten Andy Reid in his life. All these things combine into making, and I've said, going back, by the way, to the Super Bowl when they beat San Francisco, I said the very next day on the show, Patrick Mahomes should never be an underdog again for the rest of his career until proven otherwise. But what reason? Again, as you saw his stats as an underdog, he's awesome. Andy Reid as off a bye, awesome. There are going to be folks the next day after this game. They'll be like, "Oh, are the Niners in trouble?" I disagree. I do not think so. They were 3-4 after a Chiefs loss at home in 2022. Did not lose a game the rest of the season until the NFC title game, and obviously they were playing by the time the second half rolled around without a quarterback infamously. I'm not saying that's going to be the case. They're going to run the table and win out. I'm saying the Niners are going to go on a run. It's just not going to start today. The man who has owned the Niners in his career, Patrick Mahomes, will continue to do so. Chiefs win this game. Take them +2, obviously, and to win, of course, 24-19 over the San Francisco 49ers. They'll get to 6-0. Again, if you're expecting especially against a great Niners defense, if you're expecting the offensive explosion from Mahomes of the Chiefs offense, folks, you're just not getting it. Not with the personnel that they have as we sit here today. So I will go with Kansas City 24-19 over the San Francisco 49ers. And now, finally, for our last game for
Bettin Man.
We're at Bettin Man. This is easy. This is taking candy from a baby. New York Jets, Pittsburgh Steelers from the Steel City. The Jets, despite being 2-4, with an old quarterback off an Achilles, who hasn't been good in 3 years, by the way, and an offense that is identical to last year's offense. 2 games with Zach Wilson. Somehow, someway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, they are 2-point favorites against the 4-2 Steelers team with arguably the best defense in football, with inarguably the best defensive player in football, T.J. Watt. T.J. Watt, the only player in the NFL, I saw this today, through Pro Football Focus, only player in football on the defensive side that has a 90 or above grade against the run and a 90 or above grade rushing the passer. Pass grade and run grade. T.J. Watt is unstoppable. And that is bad news for a Jets offensive line. That if Aaron Rodgers does not get that ball out quick, if the Jets offensive, that particular play doesn't develop quick, bad news for that team. T.J. Watt, I think, is going to have 2 sacks in this game, potentially a forced stumble on Aaron Rodgers. The idea that, Aaron Devontae going to, I've seen folks say today, they're going to pick up right where they left up. What evidence do we have to say that? First of all, we don't know how healthy Devontae Adams is. Now, some of that hamstring stuff might have been just before his way out of Vegas. Very well could have been the case. And I still think, by the way, Devontae is a great player. I just don't think his quarterback is. And so that factors in as well. Again, it's Russell Wilson starting in all likelihood. George Pickens basically had a Freudian slip today and saying, hey, Russell's our quarterback. Okay, don't love that. I'd much rather been Justin Fields with our bad offensive line. It's going to be a low-scoring affair, but the idea that the Jets in the spot that they're in should be favored on the road over the Pittsburgh Steelers is lunacy. Give me the Steelers plus 2.5 and win this thing outright. It's easy. 20-16, low-scoring affair. Steelers will force a few turnovers. Listen, Russ, just don't screw up. If you don't screw up, we're going to win the game. It's that simple. TJ Watt's going to do his thing. Steelers win. Wish Justin Fields were playing because I want to see what we potentially have for the future. 20-16 over the New York Jets. And in doing so, we'll effectively end the Jets season. And I said this second segment of the show, if the Jets lose, they are done. They are not, because they'd be 2-5. You're telling me just give themselves a shot to make the playoffs. They're going to win 8 of 10 games? No. That is not a realistic prognostication on the New York Jets. Oh, nice. My man Jeff's in the comments, big Niners fan. Bryson, did you see the great news? Ricky Pearsall, how about this? Is back and will be making his debut against the Chiefs. Go ahead and play the Many Men 50 Cent music. That's for, listen, he should come out. He has. Brian Robinson came out to that for the Commanders. I think it was last season. When Brian, for those that know, Brian Robinson was actually shot before the season. It might have been during training camp preseason. Comes back mid-year, ends up playing quite well for the Commanders given the circumstances. But before his first game, it was at home. He comes out, there's smoke all around him, the pyrotechnics, and they're playing Many Men by 50 Cent. They should do that, Jeff, for Ricky Pearsall. I totally agree. He says, with that said, we'll probably beat the Chiefs by 50 points. Yeah, no question about it. Jeff, he says, Bryson, all jokes aside, I have a good prediction for Ricky Pearsall. The Purdy to Pearsall connection will remind everyone of Brady to Edelman. Wow, that is high expectations. A great threat in the red zone and a guy that can move the sticks. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, George Kittle's been great, obviously, as a third down guy. I think Jawan Jennings has been that as well. If that's another guy where Purdy can trust in that spot, that's huge. And I loved the Pearsall draft pick. I thought it meant Ayuk or Debo was gone. Now, because of the fact they signed Ayuk, it all but guarantees, given the salary cap situation, that Debo is gone after the season. Listen, we'll see what happens in that regard. Listen. And by the way, I don't know if you heard. I don't know if you heard my prediction, Jeff. Can I put it up there? Yeah, I got Chiefs 24-19. Patrick Mahomes is maybe the best quarterback ever as an underdog. He's won 4 straight. He's what was it? 10-3 as an underdog in his career, 11-1-1 against the spread. Andy Reid, 21-4 off a bye as a head coach in his career. Kyle Shanahan as a coordinator and coach, 0-7 against Reid in his career. And again, this will remind you, Jeff, a lot of 2022. Like, it's so funny how similar it is. Like, where we love the Niners roster, but Mahomes pretty much owns the 49ers and the Chiefs are off a bye. I don't know if they were off a bye in 2022. I do obviously know they're off that this year. That the Niners will lose. People the next day will say, oh, is San Francisco? No, they're not in trouble. They are not in trouble if they lose this game to Kansas City. Not saying they're going to win out the way they did in 2022, but they'll go on a little bit of a run here, starting with Dallas the week after. They're going to smoke Dallas. I mean, what, with the Cowboys going to go to San Francisco and win? They barely beat the Giants. Come on now. And with that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to go catch Carving Up Live. We'll have a loaded show on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Of course, be sure to like, share, comments, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. Our next big goal, our next stated goal for Carving It Up is to get to 5,000 subscribers. So if you have not subscribed, hey, just takes a couple seconds. Take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit the big red subscribe button down there, and boom, you're part of the Carving Up family. If you have subscribed, thank you so much. It means everything to me, my family, to everybody involved with Carving Up Live. Please tell your friends about the show, your family about the show, everybody you know about the show, except for your sleeping cat. Hey, I don't know how Nealon would handle the noise at Neyland Stadium at his namesake. I have to imagine he would freak him out a little bit. Nonetheless, he's literally, his name is Nealon. He's a ride or die Tennessee fan. What can I say? Just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any and everywhere that you get your podcast. Be sure to go catch us on the Grid Network, where we dare to be different. And again, catch the show, catch Carving Up Live on Monday. It's going to be I cannot believe that these words are coming out of my mouth. The 5-year anniversary of the show, October 21st, 2019. Going to do some celebratory things to commemorate that 5-year anniversary. Obviously, a ton of football to talk about then. So very, very excited about that. We will see you then. Please stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. It doesn't matter where you lean, right, left, center. This is an issue that impacts every single one of us on a day-to-day basis in this country. And no matter what anybody will try to gaslight you on, oh, it's not a problem, or oh, there's only one solution to the problem. Both are BS. Both are not true. It's a huge problem that needs a number of nuanced solutions to solve it. And especially, the election's in 2.5 weeks. I can't believe it's that close. First of all, get out there and vote. Civic duty. A lot of people died for that, to give us that right to vote. And if there's anybody that doesn't show a sense of urgency to addressing this problem, either vote them out or vote against them, because we've got to get this addressed as soon as possible to protect the people in this beautiful country. All right. Tennessee, Bama tomorrow. I'm going to be in the building in Neyland Stadium. Cannot wait. And then, of course, a fantastic Sunday of amazing NFL games. Cannot wait to talk about all of the above on Monday's show. Please be sure to stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And as always, go Big Orange, baby. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.